Come and get started on a new mission, a new direction, a new intention. Welcome to 5.8G Alive at Connections 50 Plus. I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite.
And I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph, catering to all your prospects in the third act of life.
Economic well-being, social gratification, personal fulfillment.
Join us on Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Connections 50 Plus Facebook page, YouTube channel,
and on Gael the Caribbean.
Hi, good evening, and welcome to Connections 50 Plus 5.8G Alive. I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph, one of the co-creators of Connections 50 Plus. And as usual, with me is my colleague.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to the last of the Emancipation Series. I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite, the other co-creator of Connections 50 Plus. Jan, today we jam-packed. We don't have a lot of time to chat and talk, but I think we are so proud to close off our series with a family business that is 135 years old.
Yes.
Started in the period of slavery, survived emancipation, is going strong today, and is ready to go on for another 100 years. So
Terry-Ann, because of our time, we're going to go right into the interview.
Take note, this is real community.
Yes.
Okay, as we told you all before, we have this special guest to just end the series, our Emancipation Series. So we have with us Mr. Keith Belgrove. And Keith is the CEO of Belgrove Funeral Home and Crematorium, and he's also the owner of Belgrove Group of Companies. So we're going to be learning a lot today, and I'm sure after Keith talk, we would be also putting our things in place for that time that we don't like to talk about. Okay, so Keith, welcome, 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 and thanks again for taking that time to chat with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to both of you, Jennifer and Terry-Ann. It's a pleasure to have joined your program here, and I am happy to take a further look at it and see how we all participate and how you design your program. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so Keith, we are into legacy and family, and we know that this August gone, you celebrated 134 years of Belgroves, and this qualifies as an intergenerational family. So take our audience to the start. Let's see how this prominent family got started in the business and the evolution.
Well, someone said to me recently, you know, you look good for 134.
Congrats.
And I take that. You know, when I think about how we were started up and because we came out of the experience of slavery.
Yes.
And I sometimes think that enslaved people had to have a spirit, a burning spirit for freedom and a burning spirit to know how they will manage themselves when they achieve that freedom.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
Mary Belgrove, born 1827 in St. Lucie, Barbados.
Okay, so that was still in slavery. It was not after emancipation.
Still in slavery. In fact, a couple of her children were also born into slavery. And so they were enslaved people. I like to differentiate between a slave and an enslaved. We were forcibly enslaved,
yes,
and our ancestors were. So I always like to say enslaved people,
yes,
to demonstrate that constantly in my own head and to those with whom I speak. But so Mary was there. She was in the Belgrave estate in St. Lucie, Barbados. The Belgraves seem to have had a few estates around Barbados, but her birth record we found in Ancestry.com, 1827 on a Boxing Day in December 1827. Okay. So when the slaves freed, it's rumored that she came to Trinidad with 3 sons. And we were doing our best to find records of that. Family stories give us 1865, 1867, thereabouts. But in the National Archives, we could find nothing to demonstrate that. We were told by the National Archives that in those years, the movement of the post-enslaved peoples weren't recorded. They only recorded the other people at that time.
The Sidula and so on, yes.
That's right. So that we couldn't confirm whether it was 1865 or 1867. It's rumored that at number 30 St. James Street, that's the old telco building down St. James Street, San Francisco.
Okay.
So you may have an idea where that building is, lower St. James Street.
Yes.
And it wasn't far from the old hospital, that very old wooden structure that was the original hospital in San Fernando.
Yes, which is now the Center for persons with disabilities. Yes.
That's right. That's right next door there as well.
Yes.
And so she operated a funeral agency or funeral parlor, as it was called in those days. And when her son matured, the boy was firstly when they arrived, the children scattered. One boy went into the Gasparilla area, and there's still an arm of the family, Gasparilla, Williamsville area. One went into the Penal area, and that arm is still there. And one son stayed with his mother.
Okay. Do you know what they were doing in their respective areas?
Agriculture, and still do agriculture today. Especially the family in Penal. They're still into agriculture. I have visited them a few years ago, and yes, he's still into agriculture. Those up Williamsville and Gasparilla areas, well, they're not so much into agriculture anymore. They diversified into other aspects. In fact, one arm of the family currently works with us in the business.
All right. It is wonderful that over those years, you still have maintained the family connections. Congratulations.
There are not many Belgroves. There are Belgraves.
Yes.
There are not many Belgroves. And I'll probably share in a second a story about the Belgrave to Belgrove, how we think it came about. But so William Joseph Belgrove stayed with his mom. But before I tell you William's story, I'll tell you a little bit about the name. Remember I said he was on the Belgrave, she was on the Belgrave. It is assumed by us that when they got their freedom and when they're moving away from the estate, of course, they want to move away from the linkage, so they change that A in Belgrave to O in Belgrove. Now there are some Belgroves in Barbados still, and so this whole linkage brings us into Trinidad. So Mary died in 1910, and she is interred at Paradise Cemetery in San Fernando, not very far from the office.
Okay.
Son, William Joseph, or sometimes we say Joseph William Belgrove, he formalized and developed the business a little bit more, and he hung up his sign at number 88 Coffee Street, San Fernando. In August 15th, 1888. That we could have verified, so we took him as our formal year. How much older we are really unable to say.
Yes, yeah.
We do have a record in 1901 with his mother doing business at St. James Street in San Fernando. But how far older than that, we couldn't tell. So we took 1888 as the formal year, as our year, when her son, William Joseph, formalized the business a little bit more.
Yeah. Do you have any idea if there was any other service? I would expect she would have been serving the African population, or was it you know? Do you know if there was competition?
Well, between mother and son, hardly, because they would have been supporting each other. But there was other funeral homes around at the time, just one or two, not many as today. But and there would have been some level of competition. In those days, what happened was that we had what they call the ice box. It was a large box with lined with galvanized and a tray, a galvanized tray above. So the person was placed in that at the home. So on a donkey cart in those very early days, the ice box would have been taken to the home. We buy ice on the way along, and the person is placed in there. But that wasn't a very efficient service. So, the funeral had to take place relatively quickly. Yes. So most times the next day or the following day, the service had to be conducted. But that icebox stayed around till early my years. It hung around for a long time. Because I knew them. When I joined my father, there were about 4 of them.
Okay.
So William, as he operated funeral service, he also began as a wheelwright. He was making wheels for the carts, the stage carts and the donkey carts, etc. Eventually, he also opened a haberdashery store, all at the same location. He delved into some level of furniture business as well, all at that location at 88 Coffee Street in San Fernando.
And to be sure, is that 88 Coffee Street your location today?
No, regrettably, that went on to NHA.
Oh, okay.
That's obliquely facing the Panman at C.E.O. Street corner there. So 88 Coffee Street there. So that we are currently located at 2 to 6 Belgrove Lane.
Yes.
And I'll get to that story in a little bit.
My grandmother lived just at the end of that on Nadine Street corner.
Yes. I would have known her then, because our childhood home from about 1960 onwards was right there on Nadine Street as well.
Yes.
So we would have known her. And if I remember her, she was a very quiet person. Yeah.
Yes.
So as children, we didn't bother her too much because we know she was pleased to mom. So William Joseph developed the business even further, and it would seem that the funeral service was more lucrative than the other trades that he did. And as such, he began to focus more and more into funeral service. So William went on and he passed on. I don't recall exactly what date he passed on right now, but when he passed on, his son, Van Dyke Joseph Belgrove. Van Dyke Joseph. And if you take that name Van Dyke, it tells you about the time of his birth. Because that was First World War, and Van Dyke was a German admiral. And so that name Van Dyke, that's how it came about. But Van Dyke was an only son. And in Joseph days, William Joseph days, he built the great house there on Prince of Wales and Keith Street corner, a very large wooden structure. Just opposite where Dr. Maslin was. I'm calling names that some of the older folks will resonate with.
I'm not saying anything because the South folks would know the names.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that when your viewers look on, there'll be those who say, aha.
Exactly.
And interestingly, mother and son amassed a lot of property around San Fernando, into Lengua, into Pinal. And so there were lots of property, even along Coffee Street as well.
Yes.
So remember I opened by talking about the spirit that these people had?
Yes.
So for them coming out of slavery, recently enslaved, and being able to come into business and develop it and be able to build a great house as well as amass property. So it talks of the spirit of entrepreneurship that was passed on and passed down. That allowed us in the same family 134 years and going on.
Yes.
Wow.
So in comes Jos. Now, Von Dyke Joseph was fondly called Jos, Jos. So, but he was an only son. He was a young man who grew into a privileged family. And very frankly, he wasn't so focused on the business. So in those years and in the war years as well, the business didn't thrive the best way. And a lot of the properties at the time, he passed on, he passed on a lot to the Ramjohn family on Superior Street. Yes, and I call him name because some of the younger Ramjohns are also aware of that. And as such, one time I spoke to one of them and said, you know, I would like to buy back that property that was mortgaged to you all. They laughed at me. They said, no way.
No, you're not getting
So that's some of it. So we're still operating at 88 Coffee Street. And in came my father as the third generation. My father was Lionel Belgrove. Lionel, he had both names that sounded the same. Lionel Leonard Belgrove.
Yes.
And he was born in 1910. I do remember his father died in 1950. I also was born in 1950, so I have only a very faint memory of him. But my father was born in 1910, and he too worked with his father. Josh operated, he continued a bit of the furniture business as well. My father continued in funeral service and still a rudimentary business, and they were building the coffins in the back of the funeral home. And he had the haberdashery store in front and the funeral home all in the same building on the side. That was immediately facing Superior Street. His accountant of the day was a man named Mr. Rigsby. The Rigsby family from Lower on Superior Street. I don't know where they have all died off now, and I don't know where the survivors are. So that's how my father developed. He went on, and then he went and he took a loan from the Colonial Life, and he purchased a property at 107 Coffee Street, and he moved to that property in 1962. And we've been there. Then, and a couple of years later, he purchased 109 Coffee Street, which was immediately next to us, and from the Chansing family. So then we became at 107.9 Coffee Street. So with the death of my grandfather, Josh, or Von Dyke Joseph Belgrove, my father took over, and he moved the business from 88 Coffee Street onto Upper Coffee Street, where we are today. And so we've been there since that time. But with the death of my grandfather, my father had many siblings. There are those, Eric opened a funeral home in Tunapuna, just opposite what was the railway station. Hilo stands on that site now.
Okay.
He sold out to, and he went off to America. And it is said he died in a snowstorm in America. And then there was another uncle, Uncle Roy. He also had a funeral home in San Fernando. He sold out to a furniture manufacturer who also went into the funeral business as well. But my father stayed the course. His brother, Sidney, went off into the army. His other siblings, because the way the will was made, all the children had a part of the business. So we now had to come to the point of how to resolve. So my father took charge of that with his mother. His mother was a Carib woman. From our African side and the Carib side, that's how it went. And she was a very stern woman. But she got together with my father, Lionel, and they found a way to work out. They eventually sold the great house there. On it was the corner of Keith and Prince of Wales Street. They sold that and was able to distribute funds to all the others. They sold some of the land in Lengua and in Pinal and distributed to everyone else. So the business continued. The lineage now of Lionel Leonard Belgrove, born 1910. He passed on in 1978. But he too had this entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
And you know, it lived right on, because when we see Mary and Joseph William and what they acquired and how they were able to build this house, and then we came into their son. Well, he had some difficulties, and now we have come into Lionel Leonard, and he developed the funeral service business in a very meaningful way in San Fernando.
Yes.
In those days, there were other funeral homes like Bowen and Pelham Lane and Crosby's.
Yeah.
And Crosby had a daughter who became Mrs. Guy. So you see how some of it worked out.
Yeah.
So and then in more recent times, there was Clark and Batu up the street, and they're still there on Royal Road as well.
Yes, all of them on the same continuing street.
Yeah. So and there was this struggle among funeral homes because you've got to grow your business, and it's a small town, and the market is a small market. So you can see there was a highly competitive business.
Keith, can I ask you a question if I could just dive in here? And one of the things that we try to highlight, because we say to people, you can pursue your dreams at any point in time, and there's this notion about Afro in business and so on. Do you remember the kinds of conversations that may have occurred in the home, even as you were a young boy growing up? Because I think it would have been expected that you follow. So what was the conversation like, or the culture in your home that you know, we say it's a dining table thing?
A couple of things came to mind, but I'm not sure if I could share it. For instance, this Sunday, we were at the table having Sunday lunch, and my brother, one of my bigger brothers, because the whole family worked in funeral service, mother, brother, everybody was in the funeral home, and he made a joke about what the chicken leg reminded him of, and with that joke, I, myself, and two other siblings pushed ours away, and in a flash, he grabbed it and was gone with it. So my mother now, her mouth is full of food, and with all of that, she laughs now with a full plate, full mouth of food, and sprayed the whole table down. But it's mother, so we didn't stop. We had to eat the food anyway.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it was always, you see, Lionel Leonard, my father, was all about quality. We must deliver quality every single time. So as such, that was always the issue. My elder brothers would help build coffins and prepare, and there was always about how well it was finished.
Yes.
Whether we got to the funeral on time, whether or not the person, the relative that we were entrusted with, looked well. So there was always the quality of timing, because funeral service is such a nature that when the death occurs, it's a short time to the funeral with many things to prepare. The shrouds to be sewn, and all of these things had to happen.
Yes.
So the conversations were always one of quality, one of whether we are getting out there on time, whether the vehicle is going to be ready on time. So for instance, I started in 1962. I was 12 years old, and just leaving secondary school, and we'll have to just leaving primary school. Yes, and we'll have to join my father in evenings. He is downstairs he had a way he did the caskets, and it was a secret as to how he will pattern these caskets, which became extremely popular in the marketplace, and the competitors wanted to know. So he would lock himself into a room, pattern the caskets, and I would be upstairs to take if anybody can. Any client comes or call, and he ran an extension into the room, but he wouldn't answer, only if I had to answer the telephone, and I would call to him when it rang and tell him what it's about, and he'll pick it up from there. Eventually, or if a client walked in the door, I was shouting, "Daddy, people come." That type of thing. And then eventually I stopped calling him and I started doing it myself.
Okay.
And when he came upstairs, I say, "Well, Dad, people came and I did this." He looked it over. A couple of times he gave me a couple of pointers, and then eventually he'd look it over and say nothing. So that was my start at 12 years old.
Let me ask this also. That your entire family, they were expected to be in business. Did you at any time feel that you didn't want to be in the business?
Yes, of course. It was 8 of us in the family. My eldest sister was the seamstress, and she designed the patterns, etc. And she's currently visiting from Canada right now, where she resides. And every now and then she'll remind me, I created this pattern, one that we still use, So, and my brothers, 4 elder brothers, they were all involved, who building coffins, who's doing the driving, etc. And so with all of them in the business, I decided I will be a dentist. So, that was my focus. So come 1968, it's time to make some decisions and to know where I'm going and etc. And I said to my dad, I would like to go to dentistry. And he says, okay, that's fine. But what I would like you to do, I'm going to send you off to funeral directing school. If you don't like it, let me know. And I was off to funeral directing school in the USA. And lo and behold, here I am today. So, but I wasn't the only one that went off to funeral directing school. As I said, he was a real innovator. He was also the people's sweetbread. A lot of times people will come in, they don't have the funds, and he just do it for whatever they have. Or tell them, okay, I will pay me when you can. So you can imagine we had a very large receivables. Yes, because 6 feet under, most people did not have that as the priority to come back and pay the funeral home. So we carried a large receivables at all times. He used to, every Saturday morning, he will give out money to the needy. They at the time we call them beggars. And they will come to the pavement in front of the building at 107 Copy Street, and we'll be there sharing out 3 cents. And we'll be there and walking around the crowd sharing out 3 cents to the people.
Yes.
That type of spirit of sharing, he would stand as well on front of the building and say hello to everyone.
Yes.
Wow.
I tried that, and I think they looked at me as if I'm a crazy man. It demonstrates how times changed.
Yes.
So it demonstrated how times changed. He sent my elder brother off to, in 1962, he sent my elder brother off to New York. Reynold was his name, and he went off to school, the same school I attended, MacAllister Institute of Funeral Service. But he stayed in New York. He didn't come back at the time. So that when it came to my turn, I was offered, okay, go to funeral directing school, and if it's anything, we'll do dentistry. I think was a kind of wisdom he used on me there.
Yeah, he probably saw your talent and your motivation.
I think so, one worker, a man by the name of Mr. Rollins, I remember his name clearly, I was in the funeral home doing my homework, and what Mr. Rollins used to call that pusher. He said, "Pusher, this is the one, you know, this is the one." Lo and behold, Mr. Rollins was seeing something that my father agreed with. So as we moved on, so my father came in with the first qualified funeral director in the south of Trinidad. Although my brother didn't come back, he did support and give guidance, etc. And so my father had the first qualified funeral director in the south of Trinidad.
And that's you.
No, that was my elder brother, Belgrove.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although he didn't come back, he did support from where he was.
Yes.
Then my father bought in the first electrical refrigerator
Okay.
in Trinidad and Tobago.
And that was when?
And that was being about 1963, 64.
So till then it was the galvanized ice box.
It was the wooden ice box lined with galvanized sheeting inside.
Yes.
So, and because we had 3 or 4 of those in the room on which people would be placed in, and there's those that we took out to homes. So once that electrical refrigeration came in, and then we started to do away with the icebox. But families, especially Hindu families, and some Baptist families, spiritual Baptists, still wanted to keep the deceased at home.
Yeah.
So the icebox still went out.
Yes.
But the days of that were numbered. The sanitation, it wasn't the safest, healthiest thing. So we were happy to give up that, but that wasn't given up until about 1974, because the culture was changing slowly.
Oh,
yeah.
So you really had buddies in the home for a while.
For quite a while.
Yeah.
Quite a while. We last used the icebox about 1974.
Yeah.
And I
ended its week.
Yes. I had just come home from school, and I am very familiar with it. I went to that home in Woodland, just beyond south of Laramie, and where that was one of the last uses in 1974. So where we took them home, because I did so after environment school, I also did a business administration course in New York, and came home finally in 1974. By that time, my father was not in the best of health, and his brother, Sidney Calvert Belgrove, had already joined him. Sidney joined him about 1965, 67, around there, and was supporting him. So while my father wasn't as healthy as he was previously, Sidney was the other mainstay that was assisted. Because when all my elder brother in New York, I was off at school in New York. My brother Carlisle went off to Canada, and Edmund, another brother, stayed with my father. So Uncle Sidney joined up as well.
Okay. So you go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead. You shoot it.
No, and I'm again monitoring time and looking. So we've arrived at the 60s, 70s, and you are now coming into the business. So you are 3rd generation.
I am now the 5th generation.
5th generation.
Yeah, because you have Mary,
yeah.
You have William Joseph.
Yes.
You have Von Dyke.
Yeah.
You have Lionel.
Yes.
Now you have Keith.
Okay.
Yes.
Generation already in. 6 Mercedes and Christian Belgrove are already in.
And those are your children?
Yes, those are my children.
Okay. So when you came in, all right, let's speak through your uncle and retain. How did you look at this business, and what was your perspective in terms of going forward now that you gave up being a dentist and you decided to do this full time?
With a deep anchoring in service from firstly growing up, being born into it. And I'll give you one quick joke. I know we are tight for time, and I'll move.
Go ahead.
But in the 1950s, as an infant, I am told that my bassinet was a casket. because my mother is there in the haberdashery store, my father is working, and to keep the baby under control, they placed me in a casket right there. So something about me, it was stuck into me from that time.
It was the stand.
It's a comfortable piece.
But you know, they are comfortable.
Yes.
In the 70s, we were having parties at home and all of that. So your friends stay over. I slept in a coffin, and they are comfortable.
For real?
For real, they are comfortable.
Wow.
So as I came home, I'm now a qualified funeral director. I have business administration behind me, and I started to make a number of changes. Firstly, I introduced the thing we call the funeral program. That leaflet that everyone used today on funerals, I created that.
Was that you? Were you the first person in Trinidad to do that, or in the South?
First person in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean and in New York to have done it.
Yeah.
At the time, the Americans were doing a little 3x3 thing. And so I was aware of that. So when I came home, I started doing a full scap folded over in two. And I told a little story about the person and all of that. I listed the relatives and all of that. Families who used that here took it back to the diaspora. So when I went back to America now, and but this is what I did. And today, even it's all over America.
Standard, that's standard. That's a souvenir.
That's all over the world now. So, and that's how that started. Embalming is really all about sanitation. So, and to improve what was happening, I did a couple of things. We started sanitizing or embalming every single one of the persons we were entrusted into our care. But what it does as well, it also makes you look very lifelike. In those early days, the person was placed in the bottom of the casket. They lay down in the bottom. I changed that. I padded it all the way up. And literally, if the cover was with that concave, you were in the cover, not in the box. So that when it was open now and people came to view you, you were there facing them. What I did, I tilted the person a little 5 degrees. So the
you started standing up thing. You started.
So now you were slightly facing the people you were walking to. And boom, the business took off much more.
Yes.
And we became the dominant service in Trinidad and Tobago. Out of the quality of service, when we were celebrating our centenary in 1988, I also introduced the bereavement counseling. And, you know, that was an aspect that I've always wanted to do. But a friend of mine, her husband had taken his own life. And I was away at the time. And when I came home, I just called her to offer condolences. And she said, Keith, how you know I wanted to talk to somebody? And that is how I started bereavement counseling, because we were also trained in bereavement counseling. So, and we started it. We had a Mrs. Barbara Derry and a couple others at St. Paul's Anglican Church, and that is how it got started.
Okay.
And today we are still the only funeral home with a qualified bereavement counselor on staff full time. Because
what does the bereavement counselor do in the context of death in a family and arranging a funeral service?
Well, they consider the emotions that we create. And when you're separating that emotion, when you're separating from the people you love, you go through grief. Grief is very, very real. It's a very strong emotional experience. And in many times, financial as well. So in funeral service, we see that, we know that. And how could we be doing this business and not assisting with that aspect of it as well? And so I initiated it back then free, and today I still do it free. Because, so in other words, what we did, we have now products to take you from your youth through your working, where you pay for it through your working years. We handle it, we assist you with information about estate management and estate planning. And as well, we support you with the grief aspect of it beyond the service.
Wow.
And that's why we called ourselves a full service, because beyond that, we even went on and then created the first private crematorium in Trinidad and Tobago. We would have had the very first one, but the government of the day, despite the law allowing it, we were denied for a long time. It took 21 years of application before we got it. And sadly to say as well, a change of government, because it's with the change of the government, the new government saw the value in having a crematorium, and then went in and we got the permit. And right on the heels of that, we got a call from the Tunapuna area and said, we need one. And that is how the one in Twin City stands today, on 3 acres there. Now, the piece of land we got there, 2 acres there, we got it on the inside, but it was a commercial area. And somebody from a hardware was looking at the piece in front. So I went back to home construction where we purchased it, and I said, I'm taking that. And as such, we then created a world-class cemetery there.
Yes.
A cemetery that looks like a lawn year-round. A cemetery of colorful shrubbery. A cemetery where we do not dig the dirt. The system allows us. We have, firstly, it can accommodate 4 persons in it deep. It is green. It does not impact the water table because we are an area of Wassa aquifers.
Yes.
So design a green cemetery whereby it in no way impacts our water table. And as well, we lift the cover of that cemetery. So it is, just think of a good example. Think of a soft drink box. Right? So all those chambers, and then put a cover on top of the chamber, and then you put your lawn grass, your soil and your lawn grass. So there's a system as how we can lift that cover when we need to reuse it. So we don't bury there. It's too high end for that name. We encrypt people there.
Okay.
So, and we also had to create a machine to allow us to do this lifting. So then we went down to Kareli and we went down to MIC. We eventually settled at MIC, and we sat there with the engineers and their software, and we created a machine that never existed before.
Wow.
To lift this cover, because it lifted in tonnage. You're talking about something 7 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 4 inches thick, reinforced concrete.
Yes.
And then 2 feet of dirt on top of that. And then if it has its marker, another 600-pound headstone sitting on it. So we had to create this machine to lift that. So today we are funeral home, crematorium, and cemetery.
So you've eliminated that horrible
You don't get that, and you know that is why one of the innovations of Lionel Leonard is what we call the grave mat. So that was the mattress we will put to help buffer that song.
Yes.
Because we knew that is when an emotional comes.
Yes.
Jump in the hole.
So as simple as those things, and they're still used today. As simple as those things are, it came out of pain. Feeling people's pain and wanting to do something to support the people.
Okay.
What we're doing now, we looked at Tobago. We're opening a crematorium in Tobago very shortly. It should open this year. And in the new year as well, we will be opening one in Point Fortin. So we now have 4 crematoria across the country, Trinidad and Tobago. We have a private cemetery we call Orange Grove Memorial Gardens, because It's Memorial Gardens because there we have a record of everyone we inter there. And we have Mr. Manning there with us, our former, the Honorable Patrick Manning, who's next with us.
Yes.
So we have all sort of people there. 350 persons reside there with us peacefully. And families come there. We have people picnicking there. We have a religious minister there. On his birthday, the family came with their picnic baskets, and with the children, they were able to run and play. And they played their hymns and spent a few hours. At All Saints, people sit there, they lie on the grass.
Yes. So it's almost as you see in the movies, as it were.
Better. Better. Because where else can you stay there till 8 and 10 and under security and lit? Where in this country are you finding a lit cemetery that you can be there by night? So it's Orange Grove Memorial Gardens.
It is one area I'm very interested in too, where you have that the financial aspect of it. Where you can prepare for your funeral service. Now, to me, you know, when you hear death is taboos, speaking about funerals, everything is not taboo. How successful is that? Do you have the people actually coming and paying, for the funerals?
I'll tell you how that came about for us. As you know, I was with my father in the office from 1962. I was 12 years old. And mainly ladies, senior ladies will come in and they would put down some money, and when it's their turn, they will tell that I have left in my Bible what dress I want to use, and I've left some notes in my Bible. Or some will say I've left more money in the Bible, and they'll tell them where it is, because they didn't always want the children to know where it was.
Right, okay.
So again, in 1988, at our centenary, I then founded Family Legacy Company Limited. And I called it Family Legacy deliberately, because we were also seeing the problems that a lack of wills and a lack of separation was causing, the way it disrupted and destroyed families. So we were wanting by this company to formalize a way in which you could pay for your funeral service in working years and have what we call a cashback, so that we sold you a plan. If the funeral was 20,000, we sold you a plan of 25. So the funeral is automatically paid. And at that time, when you come to Belgroves, you don't stick your hand in your pocket, you stick your hand out for that day. Because we understood that at this time, there are many other little expenses. And as such, we created a fund for you to have to cover those expenses as well.
Okay.
And so that there were different tiers of the plan. It started really at 10,000 in the early days, but right now it starts at 20. And 20 was the highest. Right now 100,000 is the highest, because the change. And plus we saw that there were some families wanting something better. And we got an insurance provider. So what we did, we created it like a group, and we went and bought a group life plan. And Guardian Life supported us for many years with that. We have over 5,000 people in such a plan. And I encourage everybody, just call Belgroves, call Family Legacy, Kingsley Lewis at Family Legacy, and he will support with that. We have business development officers who will come out and assist you. You can come to the home or what. I'll tell you a quick story. Forgive me for not calling the name. The man was a well-known contractor in San Fernando. In his senior years, he came and he met with me. This is about 85. And he says he made his own plan. He made his payment, and he went home and he told the children. They quarreled with him. Dad, no, that is for us, Dad. And they brought him back a couple of days later. He came in, he said, Keith, I know my children. I know they won't have the money when the time comes. So I will sit here for a while then give me an envelope with any paper inside it. When that gentleman passed on, his son came, Mr. Belgrove, my father, you still have the plan? I said, yes, your dad's plan. He said, thank God, I didn't know where I'm getting the next cent.
Yep.
Bear with me one more story there, because it's powerful.
Yes.
This lady, she's alive today. She was, when she retired as a nurse at San Fernando General, she came and purchased a plan, a very nice plan in the day, $7,000 in that day. That every now and then we touch base with her daughter to just remind her she's now blind, she's now deaf, she's very senior in her 90s. And when that day comes, she does not have to pay another cent because it was insured. And and that plan today is worth $50-something thousand. Powerful plan.
Yeah.
We went and we introduced it to CUNA.
Yeah.
So, and then CUNA organized and did their thing. And that was the birth of
the FIP.
Yes.
I spoke in those
days. That's very
that was the FIP. So in little ways we impacted.
Significant ways.
And now going into that's not little ways.
Yeah, but you didn't do it with the intent of it getting there. You did it with the intent to help people, yes.
You saw the need, yeah.
Look what has become today. So, and we went on. So now the latest innovation is these four, and we are now beginning to rebuild our casket factory, because I talked about the Belgroves group of companies. So there's the funeral home and crematorium. Then there's Family Legacy, which we just spoke about. There's Cemetery Management Company, and that's the company that owns Orange Grove Memorial Gardens. And we plan to put more across the country. So Cemetery Management owns Orange Grove Memorial Gardens. And where there's a need, we will support with more across the country. That's a very high-end product.
Yes.
Then there's Lifetime Promotions, and Lifetime Promotions is our marketing arm, and we do things like streaming. For instance, when streaming the funerals was one of the innovations. Long before the word streaming came about, we were doing videos of funerals and sharing the videos, etc. Now it has become very digital. We are streaming. For instance, when COVID came around, we immediately started streaming one time. And we're developing that into something new that will be launched very soon. So that's, and then caskets and funeral supplies. We supply many funeral homes across the Caribbean, very few in Trinidad because of the competitive nature. And those are the companies that we own. There is another company that we're now creating for a very special purpose, which we'll talk more about, and that's what the future is about.
Okay. Before we close off, though, I would love to hear how you're able to convince your children to get into the business.
Challenge of challenges. I have 5 children. My first 2 children are Americans and they live in the US. My second 3 are all Trinidadians. Mercedes, who leads the 6th generation, and she has 2 degrees behind her, but I kind of geared Mercedes for this life. And Mercedes tells me today that, you know, Dad, if it was up to me, I would have chosen something else, but I know the heritage, I know what this means to you, and I know you prepared me through my years for this. So Mercedes and my son, Christian, who is into marketing and photography, they are the 2 to come in. My youngest boy is going on 13 years, now starting secondary school, and that is Keith Belgrove. And so there's a lot of time for him to decide what and where.
Okay, great. That's good.
I'm getting him for a particular thing, hopefully outside the business, but will come into meaningful support for the business.
For the business, yes.
As we look into the next 100 years.
And I think that is so important.
That legacy, yes.
I say something, and I will want to make a closing statement when you're ready for me to close. But I always say, if the children are not better than the parents, we are failing as a family. The children must always be better, because that is where the growth will come.
Yeah.
And I want to share with you, we have a vehicle we call a vintage hearse. A lot of people have seen it. It looks like a very old antique vehicle.
Is that the one that's glass?
Yes, yes. Now, I actually had that created by a company in the US. As a child, my grandparents had this old-time horse and carriage thing that was the hearse in those days. You see them in Western movies.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that as a child. So Mercedes and I were at a funeral service convention in the US, and she said, Dad, why don't we create something and unique? So the back of the hearse is the memory I had of what the carriage looked like in those days, because the funeral was drawn by horses in those early days. And then the front of it, the company we chose designed the front of it to match with the back of it. So that vintage vehicle is really a story about the history of Belgroves.
Oh, wow.
And at Orange Grove Memorial Gardens here in Twin City, I'm currently in Twin City, there are 10 marble columns standing there. 6 of those columns have planters on top of it, and represent the 6 generations of Belgroves. The 4 empty columns represent the future.
Ah, that's great. Yes, that's fantastic.
So those are some of the things. Even the Funeral Directing Association, I founded the first one in 1974 and coined the term funeral director, because at the time we were undertakers. I said,
yes,
Father didn't send me to school, do business administration, do funeral directing, and then you call me an undertaker? No way. So I copied the term from the Americans. We are funeral directors. Today, everybody call themselves funeral directors. So and we became activists, and we are still the primary activists in the country for licensing laws for funeral service. We started in 1999, and we still don't have it yet. Every government noted the need for it, but nobody gave it the priority it required. Thankfully, Mr. Manning took it into cabinet, but shortly thereafter, it had elections, and the government changed.
In the election.
Yes. And then each new government after that, was many changes, short-term changes took place. Everybody saw the need, nobody gave it the priority. Then the former AG, Mr. Alwari, yes, we talked, and we have moved forward very meaningfully. So the policy document is now done, and I believe a draft bill is ready. So we're going to be knocking on the Prime Minister door, the AG door, the Minister of Local Government doors, to get this as law before this term of government is over. Because today, when I started with my father, we had 22 funeral homes. Today, we have 77 funeral homes. And not everybody practices funeral service in a manner that serves the people who demand or who urgently need quality service. And as such, we keep that battle going as well.
Yes.
So Belgroves, 134 years, and we are going to be here another 134 years. And we do that because we focus on what is the need, what people need, and we try to fill that need.
Keith, at this stage, congratulations to you for all these years, quality service, and keep growing and growing your business. So we like you at this stage because we know about time.
Yes.
So, what would you like your parting words for our audience?
I want to quote Denzel Washington on a speech he gave at a graduation class. So I'm not going to quote him fully. It's too long for our closing. But to every child, to every business person, and to the future, he said, ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. Without commitment, you will never start. And without consistency, you will never finish. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. Follow your passion. Dream, but have goals. Always, and I'm adding, always, your goals must always serve your fellow man. With that, I leave you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was nice chatting with you.
I think the greatest pleasure for me is that we are closing our emancipation recognition and homage to our Afro businesses with a business that actually started in the period when we were enslaved and continues today and is prepared to move on for another 100 years. So I cannot think of a more perfect way to end this celebration and to congratulate you, your ancestors, and your successors, and wish you all the best.
We want to thank Mayor Rigello because we have done a whole lot in San Fernando. Many things we did here in San Fernando, and Mayor Rigello recognized it.
Yeah.
He first gave me the key to the city of San Fernando.
Oh yeah,
Then,
congrats.
Thank you. And then it was through Mayor Rigello that we now, our formal address is now 2-6 Belgrove Lane, San Fernando.
Yeah.
Always must pay homage. And
absolutely. It is so well deserved. So well deserved. So, we are happy to be able to carry this story, and we are sure our listeners would be very, very pleased. So thank you.
Thank you again. Anytime. Bye-bye.
What a privilege to hear the story of the Belgrade into Belgrove family from 1820 something. I mean, continuing.
You know,
the legacy continuing, how we encourage children, how we encourage continuity. It is simply a strong emancipation story.
Different skill sets too.
You know, Jennifer, it has been a tremendous pleasure. And I think I speak for both of us here, viewers, for us presenting this Emancipation series for all of our interviewees, from Hazel Hedon Simonet, Natalie Phillip of Chimuk Bakery, Cheryl Bowes, our Jacob Opade, and now today we had Keith Belgrove. Listen, we are a proud history. Happy emancipation to everyone.
Happy emancipation to you and Terry Ann coming up too, if we have to say happy independence.
Exactly.
Yes,
August is our month. So until next week, next period, we will be in September with something new. Happy independence, happy emancipation. Let's keep thriving, doing well, 5.8G. Okay, so bye.
50+ Tribe and followers from Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean.
Thank you for joining us on this Connections 50+ 5.8G Alive show.
We hope you enjoyed the lively conversation and look forward to seeing you next week.
Don't forget to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We really love getting your feedback. Bye for now.